Welcome to this chapter 1, topic 1.1 for ISTQB Foundation Syllabus, and here we will discuss the first topic of the first chapter, which is what is testing. So let's see what is testing. Let's understand the definition. Definition of testing is it's a process to evaluate the functionality of a software application with an intent to find whether the developed software met the specified requirements. So here there are three keywords for understanding this definition. First keyword is process. What exactly a process is? Process is group of activities which are usually planned. So here testing is also a group of activities and all these activities are planned. We cannot say that testing is a single activity. No, it's wrong. Testing is a group of activity and usually these activities are planned and these activities are starting from the very first phase of the software development lifecycle. We will see this concept in the next slide. Second thing is evaluation. How to evaluate something. So how one examiner is evaluating the answer sheet of the students. He must be having the answers what student have written, and then he must be having the model answers which are the expected answers, and based on that he is identifying the discrepancy whether the answer is pass or whether the answer is fail. In the same way in testing, we have to evaluate, we have to log the test outcome and report the factual observations, and how these observations are reported based on the actual result, based on the expected result, and then we will decide whether the test case has been pass or fail. So that's evaluation is also a very important feature of the testing. And then we have the requirements, which means requirement should be matched whatever specified in requirement documentation or the user stories. So for example, there's a requirement that when user logged to the login screen, he will have the home page and the home page logo should be displayed but in the right. But actually the logo is displayed on the left. So display of the logo is there, but it is not as per the requirement specified in the documentation. So it is a kind of a bug from testing point of view. So that's the definition of testing, and these three keywords are very important. Now understand the concept which is known as testing is planned. What it means? It means testing is an activity which is usually very planned. It has to go through different phases. So first phase is planning, second phase is execution, third phase is defect logging, and the fourth phase is closure. Let's understand this with the help of an example. So for example, I have a user story which is saying all users must be having one screen where they can make a valid login. Now based on this requirement, I have to plan. How I can plan? I have to review the requirements. I have to make some test cases of valid login. I have to make some test cases of invalid login. So this way I can plan it. I have to review the requirements, define the scope and schedule. So these are different parts of planning. So once this plan is there, I will execute the test case, whatever I have written, right? And based on the test case, I will identify whether there are some deviations or not. If there are deviations, I will report a bug, and then finally I will do the closure. And what exactly I am doing in closure? I will making a report that for this particular user story, we have written 10 test cases, we have executed 10 test cases. Out of 10 test cases, 5 are getting passed, 5 are getting failed, or whatever the result is. So in this way, I want to show you that testing is a planned activity. It has to go through different phases, starting from planning, execution, defect logging, and closure. Another concept is static testing versus dynamic testing, which says testing has to be start from the very first phase of the software development lifecycle. So that is static testing. Even if we don't have any code to execute, even we don't have any screen to see, but still we can do some testing, which is known as static testing. And this is based on the requirements review and based on the inspection and walkthroughs. And another one is the dynamic testing. Dynamic testing is when we have a code in front of us, we have some screens in front of us, and then we are playing with different kind of inputs and seeing the output. So that is dynamic testing. So let's understand it based on one example. So I have a spec or a user story which says Facebook user should be automatically logged out after continuous 10 seconds of session. So when this spec is with me, I will review this spec. I will review this spec based on various parameters like whether it's business feasible, whether it's deliverability feasible, or whether it's technical feasible. And based on that, I will ask my questions to the product owner. That is known as requirement analysis. So business feasibility, I will see, okay, what the impact of this thing on the end user. Probably it's very hectic for the end user. End user will be completely disturbed. So I will raise this point that this requirement is not making any sense, because if the user is automatically logged out after 10 seconds, then it will hamper its continuity. I can give my suggestions. So this is just one example to show you how we are doing the static testing, how we are reviewing the requirements. We are reviewing the requirements based on business feasibility, technical feasibility, and deliverability feasibility, and giving our suggestions. That is static testing. We don't have any code, we don't have any screen, we don't have anything to see, but still we are testing it based on walkthroughs, requirements review, and inspections. Now, what is debugging? Debugging is a process where developer will identify the cause of bugs and make the corrective measures. And what's testing? Systematic exploration of a component or a system, where main intent is to identify and report the defects. What's the difference? So debugging is a process which is not so much systematic, which is not so much planned. On the other hand, testing is a process which is very systematic. Debugging is a process which is usually made by developers for making some corrective actions. But testing, done by testers, done by developers, and here the main intent is to find the discrepancy. So let's see one example. So here is a code which is used for multiplication of two numbers, and in this code, mistakenly, developer has used plus sign instead of multiplication sign, and this is the screen, which is showing we have to enter two numbers, and then we click on enter button and we can see the multiplication. So when any developer will use this screen and enter two inputs and see that it's not a multiplication, it's an addition, he will directly jump to the code, he will debug the code, and while debugging the code he will analyze he has used wrong symbol. Instead of multiplication he was using plus, so he will just change it and that's it. So it's not so systematic approach. The intention is to make the corrective actions, but whether the same screen come to the tester, so he will plan what kind of test cases he has to write, then he will execute the test cases. In the test cases, while execution, he will see expected answer is not the actual outcome, and then based on that he will make the test case fail, he will give it to the developer, and then developer will fix it. So that's the very planned way of doing something, and that's testing. But debugging, it's used by developer for some corrective measures, and usually it's not so much planned. So that's all from my side, and for more details stay glued to teacherlesson.in. Thank you very much.